It's a typical beautiful day in the grassland town of Paluma, being the royal capital. As traders talk about confidential terms in their contracts, their demon-human servants, of all various shapes and sizes, pack the carts of vendors. Their supervisor's not happy with how slow they're moving, whipping the ground shows dissatisfaction. The employees don't seem to care about this, and they keep working at their existing pace. Given that nobody else seems to be reacting, this appears to be a standard behavior. On the other side of the street, a more wealthier employer has his demi-humans packing his goods. However, unlike their competitors, they appear to be in a more positive frame of mind while discussing the progress of their work. In addition, his employees are dressed more opulently to demonstrate their social standing. Banaza, being their employer, arrives at that moment to see how they're doing. The boy is just a regular trader, nothing more, providing his employees with a schedule update. He states that since his business keeps growing, they should soon have one more cart to fill up, arranging to offer to buy the crew dinner in exchange for them working an extra hour, apologizing in advance for holding them up and taking more of their time. As Banaza reaches to cover their salary, he begins to receive remarks from others, questioning whether he is indeed providing cash to the demi-humans. The other business owners look at him as a disgrace, with them treating the race of demi-humans like slaves rather than employees. Banaza hears this discussion, taken aback by the lead worker, who reminds him that as a demi-human, he isn't required to pay them. Although Banaza acknowledges this is the case, he still wants to do so, giving the man money and advising him to go enjoy a pleasant supper. A girl then approaches them, butting into the conversation, advising him that it would be futile to dispute this with him, and that he should just go and enjoy dinner. Upon hearing Quinn's comments, the ogres agree to take his money. All the other workers, with them all cheering as they're gonna get a free meal. The young man is perplexed, puzzled as to why people must endure suffering and cling to unfavorable feelings. Quinn finds this ideal to be appealing, but also regrettable. She notes that in the capital, they are in the minority in this type of mindset. He looks down and notices that his hands start glowing. He soon becomes terrified as light envelops his body. Quinn turns to go check up on her pal and see if he's okay, but he vanishes. Banaza starts his inner monologue, questioning why he was picked for the following next steps. Still, nothing can be changed about this, because now he's already here, and he cannot go back to his previous world. The 198th human candidate has been successfully summoned, with an elderly wizard informing his peers. Mages in black cloaks stand atop a pillar of light, encircling Banaza. The head mage welcomes him to the kingdom of Clyrode, referring to him as a hero candidate. The young man is bewildered, minimizing himself, giving his name as Banaza, but claiming that he's just an average trader, nothing more. The wizard claims that because the realm is fighting the forces of evil, they have turned to an old ancient magic ritual, asking for assistance, with their goal to be to summon great heroes, to fight for them. Just then a beast woman dressed as a maid comes to assess his abilities, forcibly placing his hands on top of an orb. The ball of light begins to glow, doing so with a blinding white light. The sage continues to speak, saying every hero is offset at level 1 to keep them balanced, but is also given a divine blessing that no amount of training can make up for. Showing Banaza's stats, with him able to read the language, the woman begins to read his stats, but she's unable to see her divine revelation. Hearing this grave news begins to start a panic amongst the people. While this really doesn't surprise Banaza, as he already viewed himself as nothing special, as he tries to calm down the crowd of people, mentioning that they still need to go and send him back home, but it cuts away at that same moment to a couple feet to the side of him, as he hears a woman squealing how another hero candidate has the stats of a legendary hero, with all his pre-existing stats maxed out. The man in question gives a cocky look, with him peering over to look at Banaza's stats, coming to the conclusion that he was the one chosen to save the world, while Banaza wasn't. Getting the attention of everyone, smirkingly listening to them praising him and their pleas for help. Seeing all these people kiss up to him, Banaza begins to freak out, feeling a bit inferior, but still asking to go home. That night at the welcoming party, the king announces that the golden-haired hero, his golden boy, is going to be their new hero. Banaza still wonders if he's really in a magical world, but still thinks a little of it, saying it'll make a great story once he gets back home. The next day, he's roughly shoved out of the palace and out of the kingdom like luggage. Earlier in that morning, the king's advisors tell him that the portal in which he was summoned by has already been closed, and once it's been closed, it can never be opened again, calling this matter of him being trapped in this world an unfortunate inconvenience. But to compensate him, they're willing to let him live in the outskirts of the Delabessa forest, under the condition that he never speaks about this matter to anyone. While on the journey, he begins trying to converse with the demi-human lizardman, but the man in question is under strict orders not to talk to the cargo. Banaza doesn't like being dehumanized and tries to get him to open up about this world, asking if his treatment here in this world is the same as his last one, asking if he's a slave here. Hearing this, the lizard man laughs, glad that he wasn't messed up in such a messed up world, saying he's paid like dirt here, but slavery isn't allowed here. Banaza wants to get adjusted to the rules, asking him more questions, but the lizard man says that the conversation here is over. Banaza is still pleased with him, saying that no one would ever know about this, but the man shuts the door on him. The trip goes on for 20 days, with Banaza not allowed out the carriage for the full duration of the trip. Once out, the man gives him the bottomless bag, with this being a bit of the king's charity for him. Inside should be enough food and money for him to last for a couple days. Walking away, he decides to give him some advice. Rumor has it that the Dark Army has decided to set up camp nearby, doing so in the Delabessa forest, looking at him flatly, telling him if he really wants his advice, he needs to live far away from the forest. He thanks the man, waving him off, but internally he isn't happy, as he's been dropped in a faraway place with little information on the world, to only hear that he needs to travel even further to be safe. Luckily, this bottomless bag is similar to the one back home, with him clearly able to see what exactly is inside without even opening up the bag. Seeing this on a stat bar, first he pulls out a cheaply made sword. As he's inspecting the sword, he hears something in the bushes, but after seeing the creature, he lowers his guard, as it seems like nothing but a lowly slime. Being accustomed to them back in his world, the slimes attack him on instinct. Slightly panicked, he closes his eyes, but he's still able to slice all 3 of them. At that moment, a notification sound can be heard, telling him he's been upgraded to level 2, with all of his stats going to infinity. With Banaza never seeing such a symbol before, another notification pops up, asking if he'd like to turn on automated voice guidance. Hearing that he can talk to somebody, Banaza is relieved, starting to feel lonely, and he quickly turns on the device. With the voice sound like a young woman, the voice automates, asking if he's also like to turn on automated magic spells. Banaza is overwhelmed with all the notifications that he's getting, as he has a long library of spells. The voice alerts him that the bottomless bag has been applied with magical spells, such as Monster Locator, Lure, and Force Recovery. He realizes that someone in the kingdom wants him to die, as this would explain why the monsters instantly attacked him, and even a lowly slime was able to do severe damage to his sword, further confirming that it's a poorly made sword. The voice then asked him if he'd like to have all the spells removed. Shocked that the voice can do this and remove all the bad spells, he gratefully asks that she do so. Banaza isn't even mad about their plan to kill him, but simply feels that their plan was dumb, seeing that they didn't even check to see if he could reverse magic spells. When he heads back to the forest, he's alerted that the forest has a high concentration of malicious, being noxious fumes created by the demons that are poisonous to human-like creatures. The voice then asks him if he'd like to purify the forest. Banaza sweats, saying that he'd like to do so, reminding himself that he does have to live here. The computer alerts him that this is going to consume 1/3 of his magic reserves. Banaza finds this to be reasonable, as magic wouldn't matter if he's dead. The spell activates, and a loud explosion can be heard. Not expecting such a reaction, he begins to question what exactly happened, only receive constant notifications that he has advanced to the next level, starting at level 3, then 4, then 5, and he soon is overwhelmed by all the notifications, begging for the computer voice to slow down. Back in the royal capital of Clyrode, the first princess of the kingdom calls for her father, telling the man that he's cruel for treating one of the heroes the way that he did, displeased that he would just banish him to the forest, knowing full well the rumors about the Dark Army, and how they set up camp nearby. The king thinks nothing about the matter more than having wasted some magic, not caring about his life. A mage comes in to interrupt their conversation, saying that by a reliable source, it has been confirmed that someone has performed the highest level of purification magic onto the forest. The king assumes that the hero that they recently summoned to be the culprit behind this, as they just sent him out, smugly saying that he'd expect nothing less from the hero he has chosen. But the mage interrupts him, as it was performed in the west, at the Delabessa forest, and not in the south where the hero is stationed at, shocking both of them. Meanwhile, the voice finishes the leveling up process, and has evaluated his skill as level 367. Banaza is confused by all this, still not knowing what this strange little symbol means, not knowing just exactly how strong he is. Deciding to turn off all the level notifications, he checks to see that his magic has been fully recovered. Still, he feels that he has low magic capacity, thinking that the forest must have not really been purified, and if anything, a small section of the forest probably was purified. Wondering if he should instead go back to the town, even though he's banned from doing so. The voice questions if he'd like to go back to the town and use shape-shifting magic to do so. He agrees to this plan. The first question the voice gives him is, which gender would he prefer to be as? He goes to select the male-shaped, but shifts to the female, changing his shape, height, and giving him a larger chest and curves. Banaza has to refocus himself, reminding himself that he didn't do this to just perf out on his own body. He he shifts to a more serious and closer resembling body, like his original. The voice then asks him if he'd like to go and teleport back to the capital. He's impressed by the teleportation magic, thinking this must be some type of common spell here. His face shifts to a more serious tone, as if he's just now realizing something. He then goes to ask the voice to teleport him back home, but nothing happens, and his magic doesn't work. He honestly didn't see this working, but still had to try, deciding to move on with his life, saying that he's going to be living here from now on, so he needs to make some money. Thinking about this matter to himself while he's walking, he realized that he needs some type of identity, as well as having cargo, if he wished to be a merchant again. But seeing that he doesn't have either of those, he decides to become an adventurer and hunt down monsters, or be a teleporter, as he won't really need much of an identification to do so. Hearing his words, the voice navigates him to Clyro Castle Adventurers Guild. The front desk girl explains that he'll be given harder and more paying jobs the more he rises up through the ranks, with their adventuring system being very similar to his world. As he's about to register as Banaza, he remembers that he probably shouldn't be going around as the same name as the fallen hero, so he goes by a different name. Embarrassingly, he calls out the name of his dog, Philo, being the one other name he could think of. While looking for a job that pays well and is rather easy to do, he hears the little girl shyly asking people for help. The poor girl is trying to request for an escort to take her back to the Delabessa Forest, willing to pay with what little money that she has, but is refused. As most know the rumors about the Dark Army, and also seeing how much little money that she has, some of the men decide to offer her some hope, as the king has been sending out some of his battalion of men to go and attack the Demon Lord's army, telling her that she just needs to wait for them to get there. But she continues to question them on how long that's exactly going to take, and begging for help now, saying that her family can't wait that long. The men start to feel pestered by the girl and shove her aside, telling her that she's annoying. Feeling awkward about watching the entire display, he decides to go and take the risk and take the girl's request. The two just stare at each other, but she says that she doesn't have much money to actually pay him. The display gets the attention of other members, with them having a sweat drop by the conversation, but they become even more shocked when he says that he actually has been near the forest before, but can also teleport her there. Others can't believe that some snot-nosed kid not only can get there to Delabessa Forest, but can teleport, thinking that he's clearly lying and has ulterior motives. Seeing as they can't exactly keep their voice down, Philo is able to hear this, with him now being aware that teleportation magic isn't as common as he thought. But soon you can hear high heels in the distance, going towards the little girl. A sword is held pointing at his neck, warning him that her name is Balarosa of the Royal Knights, deeming that his claims of teleportation magic are false, as he does not have the appearance of some wise old man. Asking what he's clearly after, next another girl chimes in, answering, saying kidnapping, enslaving, and human trafficking, with another girl asking if he's just some old creep who's into little girls. Hearing this being said, the little girl runs behind the strong tan girl who has a six-pack. Philo is not looking to cause any problems with the capital, nor does he want to get kicked out of the guild. He decides to play it cool and seem as non-confrontational as he can, politely answering back to the girls, saying that they can actually tag along with them, getting the complete shock of the other girls, as they did not expect this answer. Balarosa takes him to a secluded alleyway with no one around, commanding him to start a spell, but if he's unable to do so, warning him about the serious consequences that he'll be facing. Not wanting to hear more about this, Philo does his spell very quickly, taking them directly to the forest, with this having the girls eat their words. The short mage Bellano starts to praise his sorcery, saying that he must be of the highest order. This action forces Balarosa to drop to one knee, trying to apologize to him, with them all doing so. Meanwhile, the little girl is confused, as she can't seem to sense any malicium in the forest. Hearing this, he explains what happened, as he's purified the land already, asking if he wasn't supposed to do so, with him explaining that he's been told that this could result in death, so he got rid of it. Balarosa makes another apology to him, as they did not intend to get him involved this far, with them all pointing their weapons at the little girl. Philo's even more shocked by their actions, telling all the girls to calm down, as they can talk this out. Balarosa explains that the guild has been receiving a request that some little girl is going around the guild who would go out and solicit some men and take them back to this forest, as the men would never return, with the little girl doing this rather frequently, saying that she might as well just scream out that she's a demon, or that she's just simply working for the Dark Army. Eventually the demon drops her act, as she was disguised as a little girl, with her true form being that of Fenris, one of the four internal flames. The girls become worried, having noted Fenris' actions and title. Fenris explains that her brother sent her out to spy on the capital and bring back some food, but all that got ruined because they just happened to come here and piss her off, with the only solutions to such actions being their death, spreading more of the malicium around them. These noxious fumes bring them to their knees. Balarosa was expecting to fight some type of scout, but not one of the main bosses of the army. Fenris surprised to see that at least one of them can actually tolerate this poison, lacking that someone has a backbone here. but she still decides to kill the rest of the winches, saving him for last. Philo is able to dodge out the way of her bite. Fenris says that once a battle is started with her race, they never leave their prey. Philo doesn't think he can actually fight her while protecting the women here, so he teleports the 4 of them back to the capital. Fenris calls his dedication rather unique, but it won't save him. Philo chooses to utilize every spell he possesses in order to win, since he won't let the universe kill him off, as it seems to wish to do so, first invading her onslaught with a lightning fast leap. He then produces a rock wall, doing this to negate her tail whip. After completing this, he knocks her away with a whirlwind. To escape, Fenris casts her own spell, demanding that he just die already. Then Philo casts a gravitational spell that fixes her to one spot. Seeing that he now finally has some time to think about the situation, he considers using a magical spell would best be used to restrict her. The recommendation made by the machine is subjugation spell. He sees traces of his past world as she begins to explain that this will allow him to control her thoughts and movements, seeing another image of his past. He makes a request for another recommendation because he's unwilling to use subjugation. Fenris tries to counteract the spell with an anti-gravitational spell, but his power is stronger and nullifies it. The voice continues to urge him to simply conquer her, doing so multiple times. At last, he screams out, saying that slavery ruined his past world, and he's not going to be the one to allow it to exist here. Fenris eventually gives up, pleading to be murdered, which is customary for a warrior, as she has now ran out of magic and is helpless to defend herself. Philo lets go of his spell on her. She believes that he's playing a prank on her, reinforming him that she's simply just going to go and carry out her mission of killing as many humans as she can in a need to conquest this world, for that is simply the nature of demons. Philo thinks that all that crap about humans and demons being different is meaningless, saying that everyone is the same, with him not being able to murder someone who's already given up. She gives up, calling this human naive, but is still surprising her. Seeing no reason to hide, she transforms herself into her natural human form. After seeing her, he's embarrassed looking at her, asking her why did she take on this form, covering her up very shortly. Thinking quickly, he remembers that he must have some type of change of clothes in his bag. Reaching inside to do so, having used up all of her magic, Fenris collapses, doing so on the ground. While she's unconscious, he reads over all the spells that he has in his possession now, setting up a camp for the night. He realizes that there's all different types of magic here that can accomplish all different types of tasks. The girl wakes up inside the tent and looks outside after discovering her clothes. Fenris always thought that humans were weak, as they had different mindsets and personalities. When Philo welcomes her outside, he notices that her magic has returned. Fenris begins to blush. She acknowledges that if he hadn't spared her, other people would have just simply skinned her fur and turned her corpse into some type of prize. Fenris takes his hand and goes on to say that he will be her master from now on, with her swearing not to fight another human again. Philo retracts his hand and says that a simple thank you would have been sufficient, with her trying to call him master just being not necessary. He's passionately opposed to this idea, but she's still adamant about working for him, but he still refuses, causing the girl to start to whimper, giving him a combination of the puppy eye jutsu with added water effects. She's so dedicated that if he didn't accept her, she would take her own life. Comedically, he agrees to let her tag along, but they're doing a complete 180 in personality, with this all being an act. Philo starts to open up about his past, even revealing his true face to the girl, saying that he has no clear direction in his life on where he wants to go, adding in that she's going to come to soon to regret her actions and choosing to follow him. Fenris is undeterred by his words, stating that the race she belongs to, being Lupines, come from a code of honor, being someone that's going to be loyal to the one they deem worthy, not caring what he looks like or where he comes from. Philo stares deeply into the girl's eyes, shocking to see that she's telling the truth, accepting her. Fenris next jumps into his arms, excited that he's now accepted her. On the other side of the kingdom, the king addresses the hero's failure in defeating the Dark Lord, wishing to hear about his report on why he led a battalion worth of men to their death and fleeing from the battle. The golden-haired hero says that he's happy to answer this, firstly by insulting the men that traveled with him, asking if they all shared one brain. He recalls the story of him leading them into the forest, and at the moment they see a demon, they begin to panic, explaining that while he was trying to give orders and to calm the men down, too many of them died on the first attack, and saying how he nobly brought back some of the men alive, but stating that it was simply too late. The king cuts to the chase of his story, asking if he believes that his men are to blame, with the golden-haired hero saying simply they were, quickly leaving the meeting without even being dismissed. The king turns to one of his trusted soldiers, asking how the hero's failures in the battle truly went. The man completely disagrees with the lies of the hero, saying that the hero positioned himself at the very back, giving out orders, but when it went terribly wrong, he was the first one to try to escape, doing so in a panic, even using some of the soldiers as shields for him. In the corridor of the palace, the hero is frustrated, calling the world crappy, as he's done nothing but train himself to max out all of his stats, but hasn't seen any improvement, at least not the improvement that he's looking for, stating that even though he's at level 91, he couldn't beat a regular human, let alone defeat a demon by himself. At that moment, a scantily clad woman walks into the frame, asking what is troubling the hero. He addresses the girl named Suya, who happens to be one of his servants. He calms down after looking at her and tells the girl to come back to his quarters, allowing her to bask in the luxuries of the kingdom. Philo comes up with a plan to go to the guild to receive a well-paying mission that would allow the two of them to crash at an apartment, at least for the night. Finnery is happy by the plan, calling him master again, with this making him feel uncomfortable, asking her to please just simply use his name, with him tired of bringing this up with the girl. At that moment, a food vendor gets the attention of Finnery's, addressing her by the name Mrs. She's confused by the term, and Philo begins to answer the question in her head, with him saying that people are assuming that they're a couple, maybe even married. Thinking out loud, Philo thinks about this for a second, and deems that it would be easier to explain why they traveled together, without this raising any suspicions. This makes her heavily blush, gladly agreeing to the idea of being his wife, happy to be the spouse of an alpha being, with this being the highest honor in her race, with her now calling him darling. Inside the guild, you can see that it's as busy as ever, as people are buying and selling products, and accepting missions. Finnery receives her E-rank adventurer's device, blushing heavily. In Luberan culture, mates would be able to hunt together, and eat the bone of the biggest prey they could find, and after eating the bone, this would signify their marriage. Thinking about doing this in the future, with her now going by the name of Rias, the guild gets an urgent request, as a large pack of psycho bears are headed directly for the capital. Being to the west of them, whispers can be heard amongst them, as they begin to discuss how the species of creatures was able to kill off one of the heroes. The Dusk Woman tries to entice them, saying that adventurers of all rank are eligible to participate, adding in that the reward money is going to be multiplied by 10. Philo doesn't think that this mission is worth risking his life, seeing how if a hero couldn't do it, how could they? But Rias isn't deterred by this, not in the slightest, seeing that this species of monsters isn't that tough, as she can already defeat them by herself, with her beginning to pout at the man, and he decides to take on the mission. The two of them teleport near a house that the guild has already described, with Finnery reminding him that they can actually live there in the house while they're defeating the monsters. Soon they hear the screams of women, making the two of them run past the clearing, with them able to see that it's the 4 girls that they saw the previous day, that are now boxed in, trying to defend themselves, with a tan muscular girl having already been injured. Not listening to Balarosa's pleas for her to stay back, Blossom goes into attack, only to have it blocked by the bear, sending her back onto her bottom. Just when she's about to be killed, Philo charges his lightning bolt on all 4 of the bears, with the last one dying from Finnery's dropkick. Philo and the 4 girls catch up, with them thinking that he actually perished during the last battle. When they turn to look at Rias, he introduces her as his adventuring partner. Hearing this makes the girl mad that he actually didn't introduce her as his wife. At that moment, a leader of the Psycho Bear goes to attack them. Rias turns her head to give him a death glare. The poor bear was too afraid to attack, fully surrendering to Rias. Rias and Philo discuss on what they should be doing with it, unable to just let it walk away. But the way the two of them were talking about keeping the bear, it was as if they're making the creature their pet. At least that was the thought of the other girls huddled around them, shivering. Philo, using his shapeshifting spell, allows for them to change it into a small cute rabbit monster. Inside the house, the 4 girls give their backstories, with Balarosa coming from a knight family, Blossom being a girl who grew up on a farm, who eventually became a heavy warrior. Valerie used to work in the stables, tending to the knight's horses, and she somehow managed to find herself on the battlefield, and Belano just being a witch. Balarosa speaks on the last battle the knights had to fight in the army, where the hero suffered a great loss, leading nearly all of his men to their deaths, if not wounded. After this, the hero was furious, refusing to lead another army until they can prove themselves capable. Since then, he's locked himself away in his room. The king then made a decree to find some new recruitment, saying that as a requirement, each soldier must be able to defeat a psycho bear on their own, leading to why they're here, and forcing her to ask Philo to train them. Philo feels like he doesn't even understand his own magic, so there's no way that he could possibly teach somebody else. He tries to make up an excuse saying that it would upset his wife, with having so many women around, but hearing herself being referred to as his wife, Reese deems that it should be fine, and naturally he would want to help them, as that's only in his nature to do. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the Dark Lord Castle is reporting that a new strong enemy has just made their appearance. Philo wakes up the next morning in his bed, barely conscious, and at the end of his bed, Rias begins to whisper creepily to him about how she's always watching, forcing Philo to get up in a panic, asking the girl why she's in his room. Rias reminds him that, as she is his wife, of course they'd be sleeping in the same room. Philo recalls the events of last night. In a flashback, a kneeling Rias, in a lavender nightgown, begins to address her husband, asking for him to sit next to her on the bed, hoping that the two of them would embrace this night. Hearing the tone in her voice, he becomes uneasy, not wishing to rush too fast into their relationship, thinking that she must be unattractive, as he doesn't want to be intimate with her. Philo says that that's not the case, but instead he's just mentally not prepared for this. Rias gets upset with him, and how humans are always trying to make things more complicated than they really are. Philo tries to go to sleep in the hallway, but Rias reminds him that if he did so, the others would call his marriage into question. He's pushed out of his thoughts when Rias offers to undress him. As she pulls up her shirt, Balarosa begins to knock on the door, and then quickly walks inside, to only see the young couple getting undressed, making her get the wrong idea, thinking they're about to play an adult game. Outside, Balarosa stares down a monster boar. After giving a noble speech filled with bravado, she quickly runs away screaming. Soon after, all the girls take turns going against the same boar, but they all fail their trial. Inside the house, the 4 of them are given a room to share. Balarosa begins to ask Philo if this is really okay for them to stay here, but he says that it's fine. Seeing that they all need to train, doing so in the same house would be most beneficial. Rias interrupts their conversation to announce that she's going to be making the group a lovely lunch, but when they go to the kitchen to go eat, the group is shocked by her preparing raw meat. This leaving the group shocked. Rias doesn't see the problem with eating this type of food, with her being even more confused about burning perfectly good meat. Philo politely tells her that she should relax and allow him to prepare the meal, with Balarosa helping in the preparation of it. Philo finishes the meal. The meal consists of steak with a salad, with him praising Balarosa's cooking skill, as he didn't expect this. This makes Rias jealous. Hearing the praise, Balarosa begins to blush, revealing to the shock of most of everyone there that she's a better cook than she is a swordsman, as she's from a lower line of nobility whose family couldn't really afford a chef, so they had to prepare their own meals. Everyone eats the meal, complimenting her cooking skill. Rias tries to downplay Balarosa's cooking skill, but when she takes a bite of it, she changes her opinion, having never tasted cooked seasoned food, with her offering to do the cooking next time, sweating bullets from her words, as her pride won't allow anything less. Outside the Adventurers Guild, adventurers that are passing by the building, and even the front desk staff, are in total disbelief that Philo and Rias were able to defeat so many mountain boars, with the 2 of them able to hear their reaction from outside. Rias tells them that she would like to go take care of some private business, having some inside the town. Leo, being the representative of the guild, wishes to speak in private with Master Philo. Inside of his office, he praises his deeds, with the public being well aware of his achievements. Internally, Philo is sweating bullets, as this was actually not his goal. Leo tells him that the reason as to why he called him here is to address the matter with the king, with the king himself requesting that he join his forces to help save the world from the Dark Lord, willing to give him the status of an honorary knight, even though he's not from nobility, with this being the highest state of honor that has ever been rewarded to somebody from their guild. Asking if he would be willing to serve his country, Philo could tell this must be a huge deal in this world, as this would be an honor people would dream of, but feeling that he's not from this world, this honor means nothing to him. Remembering that he'd have to kill people who are just like Fenrir, Leo reminds him that his party of 2 were able to take on multiple A-rank threats, so they're not exactly happy as the guild to allow him just to leave, but they understand this is for the good of the world. Still, after hearing these thoughts in mind, he has to decline the offer. Afterwards, he goes outside to see a battered Rias, who looks like she just came from battle. Rias never would imagine that her greatest enemy would be cooking. In a flashback, we see that she was unable to peel food. Next, she would overseason her food. And lastly, she would use magic to destroy the building that she was learning from. That night in the heart of the palace, the hero, surrounded by his scantily clad servants, discussing the rise of a promising adventurer. Tsuyu recalls the rumors about this man, being told that he was able to defeat multiple races of A-ranked monsters, saying that the king was practically begging for this man to join their forces. Hearing that he could help in the battles to come, he orders for them to send an invoice, and have this man being brought to him immediately, claiming that if the rumors are true about this man, he'd have him serve as his right-hand man in battle. 1 month later from him saying these words, another envoy sent from the king's soldiers humbly asked that Philo and Rias come to join the hero's party, doing so under the king, but for the 10th time he declines the summon, and has his men sent back. Rias is annoyed by how many times they just won't get it through their heads that they're not interested, offering to send them away rather violently. Philo disagrees, not seeing that there's any need to do so, as he would just rather get back to training. Blossom is hard at work on the field with their pet monster. Seeing this, he wished she would put this level of dedication to her swordplay rather than the farm. Rias better trains Bylary as an archer, changing her routine of practicing, with this being of stationary targets, saying that stationary targets aren't going to help her, instead saying that she needs to go fight lower level monsters. Bylary doesn't like the notion, because she doesn't want to kill cute little creatures, feeling bad for them. Rias makes a comment saying that these particular monsters are rather delicious. Bylary says that isn't fair, as the girl knows that her appetite is her greatest weakness. Philo walks over to Bellono, offering her a magic ring as an energy source. Having finished his business, he walks away. While watching his retreating form, Bellono decides to move it over to her middle finger, as if she was a married woman. Rias emerges from the shadows, telling her she better not get any funny ideas, or face her wrath, scaring the girl to put it back. The 2 of them are brought out of their shock by hearing Bellarosa scream, asking for Sir Philo to come rescue her. Rias doesn't buy this, saying that she can defeat this low-level creature, threatening the girl not to use this to get closer to her husband. Balarosa is genuinely confused. In the bushes, another demon captain watches the group. That night, Reese prepares a lovely meal for the group, revealing her secret of going to the cooking classes in the city, doing so as daily training. Disclosing that at first, she felt that it was a big pain, but now that she's able to cook, she feels a level of accomplishment, knowing that she can do more than simply fight, with her not able to take any shortcuts like using magic to cheat. As a final lesson, she was given the ultimate recipe to win a man's heart, being an especially made spicy curry, making this just for Philo, with everyone congratulating her on her accomplishment, with this signifying her changed mindset to life. Outside, the demon hellcat Yolmus watches in complete shock, as this is not the once feared mighty Captain Finnery, at least not the one she remembers back in the army, with her being feared across the land. Outside, Finnery defends herself, saying at least she's not the one spying outside behind a tree, doing so like a creep. The two of them go back inside, where Yolmus is served some hot tea and some cupcakes. The hellcat explains that she was just simply in the area, and she's not currently spying for the Dark One. Reese explains that she lives here with her husband now, with this news further shocking the girl. Reese looks at the hellcat and threateningly tells her that she's not going to be the one to ruin her happy life here. The hellcat is stunned, as this is simply not the same girl that she knew, with her inspecting that Philo might be the one behind all of this, not understanding how he can casually sit here with two demons. The hellcat tries to make small talk, noticing how differently the area is, with the forest not holding a single trace of miasma, with no sign of a magical beast. Philo finds this to be odd, and assumes that the purification spell that he activated actually worked. Yolma mistakenly spits out her tea, hearing that he admitted to being the one responsible for the purification magic, pointing at him, hysterically yelling at Finnery's, asking if she knew about this, revealing that this is the one possibly behind the deaths of Finnery's brother and his entire battalion, being thousands of demons that were stationed here in the forest. A downtrodden Finnery's tells her to shut her mouth. Philo looks at her and asking if she actually knew about this, wondering why she never told him about it. Finnery remarks that her brother was a proud warrior, and the man wouldn't want her to be pitying her death or crying about it, saying his death as a soldier under the Dark One was simply his own fault, and he should have done a better job in protecting his territory, saying that she felt for Philo's power and his honor, with her still being bonded towards him for life, with nothing in his path that can dissuade her. A noise can be heard from the living room, getting all their attention. Looking at the door, the four girls can be seen huddled up together. The four of them say that they didn't mean to eavesdrop on their conversation, but they did hear everything. Going back to the hellcat, she devises a plan to challenge Philo, doing so in a mock battle, wanting to see his great talent for herself, with her secretly planning to kill the both of them here. Finnery sees right through her plan, but immediately says that the girl simply wants to roll around with her husband, and she won't allow this. With the two of them about to fight right there, Philo takes them outside, agreeing to fight her. The hellcat starts out by attacking with a poison vine, then follows up by attacking from underground, hoping to kill the both of them. Philo responds with a spell called Crucifixion, in response to her already breaking the rules, trying to attack Reese in their fight, binding the girl until she surrenders. In the morning, they have a discussion with the girls, understanding that if they want to report them to the guild, they won't stop them, as Reese is a demon, and he's hiding her, but they all agree not to do so, as there seems to be no harm. Reese, using her hearing, hears some trouble outside, with them all rushing outside to see Yolamus on the back of the Dark One squad of dragons. The four girls are in panic, as these dragons are known to destroy capitals, but Philo's excited, with this being his first chance to see a real dragon, reminded that there used to be dragons in his home world, but they were extremely rare. Yolamus is mad that Reese and Philo are not taking her seriously. Hearing this, Philo gets serious and kills almost all the dragons, doing so with a lightning storm spell. Seeing that her army is easily defeated, the cat runs away, back to her base. Blossom's a bit disappointed that he killed all of them, as she wanted to test out a theory of trying to last hit the dragon, with her thinking she could gain the title of Dragon Slayer if she did so. Philo wants to test out her idea, and tells the girl to throw her plowing tool at one of them. Doing what he says, she throws it. Philo enhances it with a speed and direction spell, with the tool able to puncture a hole in the dragon, killing it in one shot. Blossom jumps multiple levels, gaining a title. Seeing this is actually possible, the remaining three girls crowd around Philo, begging to do the same thing for them. Philo then reminds them that it's already too late, as the enemy has already escaped, and there's no more dragons, making Balarosa very upset.